Alright, so today I'm going to show you a couple more examples of long division. These problems are actually coming right from the worksheet that you're going to be working on in class. So you can feel free to write these down as you're going through these. These are basically free problems for you just to kind of give you another place to start if you struggled a little bit on last night's homework. So let's go ahead and start to look. We're going to look at number 1, number 5, and number 9 from your worksheets. So let's start with number 1. I've already set up our long division here, so we're dividing x squared plus 6x plus 15, and we're dividing that whole thing by x plus 5. So the first thing I have to ask myself is, what do I need to multiply x by to get x squared? Well, that needs to be another x, so I'm going to put an x up at the top. Then if I take x and multiply it by x, that gives me x squared. Then I'm going to take the x and multiply it by 5, gives me a positive 5x. Okay, I'm then subtracting that whole thing. So we're going to go ahead and subtract that whole thing. My x squareds here will cancel. Then I have an 6x minus a 5x, so I'm really subtracting here. 6x minus 5x gives me a positive x plus 15. Okay. If I go ahead and keep going then, I'm going to look, what do I need to multiply x by to get x? Well, that's just itself, so I just need to multiply by 1. When I do that, I can then take 1 and multiply it by x, gives me an x. 1 times 5 is going to give me a 5. Then again, I'm going to go ahead and subtract that line. When I go ahead and subtract there, I'm then going to have my x's will cancel, and I'll have 15 minus 5 is going to give me a 10. Okay, so this here is now my remainder, and my final answer is going to be x plus 1 plus my 10 still waiting to be divided by x plus 5. Okay, so just assembling that answer, and there we go. Okay, now that's more typical of what we saw yesterday. What I now want to move into are some that are a little bit different. So if we look at number 5 here, I can get this in the middle of our screen for us. For number 5 is just a little bit different because I'm actually missing quite a bit. I have an x cubed term, and then the only other thing here is I have a 1. So I'm missing an x squared and an x. So what I need to actually do here is I've set this up with my long division, but I actually need to set it up again so that I have both my x squared and my x term. So I'm going to still leave my x minus 3 on the front, but now I need to divide, and I need to have the x to the 3rd power. Now I want to have an x squared here, but it doesn't actually show up, so that coefficient must be a 0. So I have 0x squared. Same thing with my x's, I must have 0x, and then subtract the 20. Okay, that's going to now allow me to go through this problem and actually find those missing pieces without kind of skipping those x squareds and those x terms. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to look at this one. I'm going to take my x. I need to multiply x by something to get x cubed. Well, that's got to be an x squared. So if I multiply by x squared, that's going to give me x cubed from x times x squared. Then I can multiply x squared by negative 3. Gives me a negative 3x squared. Now again, I'm subtracting that whole line. This is where we have to be very careful with our signs. Our x cubes will cancel. Then I have 0x squared minus a negative 3. Well, the minus and negative is really like adding, so this is going to be a positive 3x squared. Okay, now that I have that positive 3x squared, I can go ahead and bring down my next term, which is a 0x, and I can add or figure out what I need to put on the top here to get that 3x squared. Well, I have an x, so I need another x, and I also need the 3, so I need a 3 and an x. 3 times x gives me 3x squared. Then when I go to the next one, I'll have 3x times a negative 3 gives me negative 9x. Again, we're going to go ahead and subtract that whole line. Our 3x squareds cancel. I have 0x minus a negative 9. That gives me a really adding that 9, so again I get a positive 9x. Bring down our negative 20, and we're ready to go. Sorry, get an extra x in there. So 9x minus 20. Okay, now we're looking to try and match our 9x, so I need to take x and I need to multiply that by 9. That's going to give me a 9x. Then I have 9 times negative 3 gives me a negative 27. If I go ahead and subtract that whole line, my 9x's cancel, and I have negative 20 minus a negative 27, which is really like an adding. So we have 20 plus, or negative 20 plus 27 is going to end up giving me a positive 7. Okay. Now I need to assemble my answer again. I'm going to take my quotient from the top, which is x squared plus 3x plus 9. I'm going to take and add to that my 7 being divided by x minus 3. That is now my final answer. Okay, so I'm hoping at this point these are starting to click a little bit more. If you notice, everything that we've looked at so far, I have what we would call a binomial on the front. Okay, we have those two terms, and they've all been linear. The highest power I have on x is just 1. What I'm going to start to look at now is what if there's more terms here, and what if it's a higher power that we're dealing with. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 9. Go ahead and get that problem here for us. Again, this one I've already set up for us. We have our 2x to the third plus 7x squared minus 4x plus 7 is being divided by an x squared plus 2x minus 1. Okay. In the end, this problem isn't much different than what we've already done. We just have extra pieces. So when I put a number at the top and multiply it down by what's out front, I have to make sure I multiply by each of our pieces. So now there's not just 2 of them, it has to be 3 of them. So when I put that in here, I'm going to actually line up 3 terms now instead of just 2. So let's go ahead and look. If I have x squared, I still need to match the first term. So if I multiply x squared, I need to get 2x cubed. So I need a 2, and I also need another x. So I'm going to put the 2x on the top. Then I have 2x times x squared gives me 2x to the third. Now again, I need to multiply all the way through. So I have 2x times 2x gives me positive 4x squared. And I'm going to line that up right with the term with the same degree, so the x squared here. Then I have a 2x times a negative 1, which gives me a negative 2x. Okay. The 7 is just kind of floating at the end for right now. We'll end up bringing that down after this next one. Okay. Now on this one I need to go ahead and subtract, so I'm subtracting that whole thing. My 2x cubed still need to cancel. I got to get rid of the first term. But then from there I have a 7x squared minus a 4x. So I really am subtracting that. That gives me a positive 3x squared. Then if I go to the next one, I have negative 6 minus a negative 2, which is, or sorry, negative 4 minus a negative 2, which is really like adding 2, which gives me negative 2x. And then I'm still bringing down the 7, so a plus, sorry, a 7. Okay, now we're ready to go again. So I have an x squared, I'm trying to get 3x squared, so I need a 3 there to multiply by. That's going to give me a 3x squared on the front. 3 times 2x gives me a positive 6x, and 3 times negative 1 gives me a negative 3. You can go ahead and subtract that. And if I look here, my 3x squareds are going to cancel. I have a negative 2x minus a 6, so I'm really am subtracting there. That's going to give me a negative 8x, and I'm adding to that 7 minus a negative 3, which is like adding, so I had a positive 10. Okay. I now have my answer, but this one looks a little bit weird. This one's a little bit tough to see that this whole thing here at the bottom is actually my remainder. Okay. Now, that's not what our remainders typically look like. Our remainders typically look just like numbers. Okay. But really what's been happening is when we get to the point where this part at the bottom has a smaller degree than the thing we're dividing by, we have to be done. Okay, so here my degree of the thing I'm dividing by, or that divisor, is an x squared, so it's degree 2. This here is just a degree 1. The highest exponent I have is a 1 on the x here. So I actually have to finish here. I can't do anything else. I just need to assemble my answer. If I do that, I'll do that down below here. I have 2x plus 3. And to that, I'm adding our remainder, which is negative 8x plus 10. Still waiting to be divided by the entire x squared plus 2x minus 1. Alright, so this here is now our final answer. Okay, so that one again is a little bit tricky. I will tell you there is one on here where you're dividing by something with a squared, but you don't have all 3 of these terms. You're actually missing the x term. I would go ahead and throw it in there just as a 0x, just like we did on number 5 inside the division. Do the same thing with the thing you're dividing by. Okay, so I hope that is enough to kind of get you going through the stuff today. My goal for you is to actually finish this worksheet in class. If you do finish, I have left an answer key for you. You can go ahead and check your answers. I only put the answers on the answer key. I did not put any of my work. That was on purpose. If you get answers that do not match the ones that I have, I want you to completely try that problem again. Okay, so on just another piece of paper, or just get rid of what you already did. Start from the very beginning and try and do the problem again and see if you can get to the same answer I had. If you continue to get to the same answer that you had, then there's probably an issue, and we can talk about that more once I'm back tomorrow. Okay? So I hope you are able to kind of work through this worksheet. If you do not finish the worksheet in class, the rest of it is homework, and again, we'll look at this on Thursday in class.